When it comes to anime, manga, and anything that has an anime look in general, I and many other people have noticed an increase in popularity over time. Yeah, that's a bit vague, but I mean specifically around the 2000s and then the early and mid 2010s. There was even a boom on Steam with anime-style games that started in 2014. One of the specific genres that saw a huge rise in popularity during that time was visual novels. And that's what I want to focus on this video specifically. Now, while I'm writing this, I'm not sure what the exact video title will be, but the working title currently is The Rise and Fall of Visual Novels, with fall being in quotes. It's important to keep that in mind while watching. I'll explain that fall part when the time comes. But first, let's talk about the rise. If you don't know what visual novels are, basically they are stories that you follow along on PC or console. Graphics are very simple, with characters having several sprites for different expressions, and the backgrounds are also 2D illustrations. They don't feature gameplay mostly, but usually they do have various dialogue options that allow you to alter the course of the story. In other words, there are various routes. There are several genres within visual novels, as you can imagine. The most common one people think of are romance or dating sim style visual novels where there are various girls who are the protagonist's potential love interest. And usually there are several routes for not only each girl, but things like bad, normal, and good ends. Often there will be true ends that can only be unlocked if you play through all the routes or, complete certain criteria. The fact that there are 18 plus and all ages versions of VNs is also very common. You probably already noticed this from the description, but there are other genres of anime-style games that overlap quite heavily. And so while I'm talking about VNs specifically, other things like anime puzzle games like Honey Pop, for example, have such a strong visual novel and also dating sim element to them that they, that kind of genre also is very much related to what we're talking about here. Up until the 2000s and early 2010s, visual novels were not really localized or translated officially. If you wanted to play them, you either needed to know Japanese, had to read a guide, or download fan-translated versions or patches. I personally played a handful of different ones during those times there. The Sagra family and Wanko no Kurasu are ones that I remember off the top of my head. I think there were a couple more. Back then, and when I say back then, I mean like 2009 or 2010-ish, there wasn't that much online info about games. I just looked for something highly rated that was translated and gave that a go. And other people aware of the genre basically did the same thing. The rise of anime popularity during the 2000s and 2010s made more and more people aware of visual novels because of their constant references to them, whether they be specific examples or references to gameplay mechanics or common tropes found within that genre. I'm sure you've all heard about, bad end root references before. Then there's anime that originated as visual novels like Higurashi and the ever-popular Fate series. What else is there? Clannad, Canon, Little Busters. Yeah, there's a bunch of those. By the early and mid 2010s, things really started to change when it came to availability of Japanese media. More and more games started getting Western releases, the manga section started getting significantly larger in bookstores, and people even started to know what light novels were. I remember around 2010 when basically the only English light novels available were The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya and Spice and Wolf. And Spice and Wolf even had an alternate cover to make it look not Japanese, because they thought it would turn off potential readers if they saw the anime art style. I bring this up specifically because nowadays, non-Japanese games try and emulate that art style in order to, get more sales, so I think that's pretty interesting. 2014 and 15 are the years when things really picked up for visual novels. Not only did we see the release of Nekopara Volume 1, which was really big at the time, but that was also the time we saw the birth of the Sakura series by Wind Cloud, which is a Western developer. Both series saw tremendous sales success, which in turn caused many popular YouTubers to make Let's Play videos on them. I know I'm mentioning the Sakura and Nekopara games specifically here, but there were several others too. But I'm not going to go through all of them. Just look on any database that shows VNs, sort by date, and you can see what there is. Even on Steam, you can do that. Just look when it was released and you'll see a bunch during that era there. Like I said, not only did popular YouTubers play these games, but an effect was that several up-and-coming YouTubers gained more and more popularity because they were doing Let's Plays. A good example of a channel that gained a lot of subscribers during that time period was Lost Pause. Because what did he do? He did the Nekopara playthroughs, several Sakura games. A circular phenomenon started occurring here. A VN would come out, a YouTuber would play it and give the game publicity. Several people who enjoyed the videos then bought the games. YouTubers obviously chose something with pretty girls because that makes good thumbnails, or they chose VNs with perhaps a bit of a surprising premise or twist. The cycle managed to sustain itself for several years, but eventually things started to change, like they usually do. Around 2017 and 18 is when things go downhill on the YouTube end of things. Remember how I mentioned that many VNs have 18 plus versions? Well, several YouTubers, especially ones still trying to make a name for themselves, started playing the 18 plus versions, though they did censor themselves during edit, or rather the game footage. Obviously, that got them attention. And because this whole genre was still like a novelty, and not a lot of people were aware of it, suddenly having these H scenes come up and then the YouTubers reacting to them being like, oh my god, what's happening? It was funny for a lot of people. But the thing is, that also got YouTube's attention, and videos started getting demonetized and even deleted. For a bit, people tried to find several ways of censoring the footage, everything from blurring, using mosaics to covering things up with novelty images, and even just zooming in order to crop out the activities. Instead of engaging with this back and forth, YouTube eventually ended up just automatically flagging VN playthroughs, even if the all ages version was played. Entire channels even got deleted or had strikes that kept them from posting for months. Obviously, many people stopped making videos on those games because they feared for their YouTube channel, and, for a lot of channels, that's their livelihood as well, so yeah. But it wasn't just YouTubers. We also have all the lazy attempts to capitalize on the VN popularity boom. One of the prime examples here is WinCloud with their Sakura series of games, which I already mentioned. WinCloud was actually very lucky, and they enjoyed early success with a lot of YouTubers picking up their games. They churned out games like No Tomorrow, and actually still do so today, which is part of the problem. If you look at 2014 to 2016, there were 12 Sakura games that came out, which is a lot. And they weren't even that cheap, which is annoying considering that the vast majority of their visual novels don't have voice acting, use almost comically stereotypical for the genre stock music, and have grammar and spelling errors galore. It was the same story release after release, not to mention that they promised sequels that never came. The only ones I can really recommend these days from their, vast library of games is Sakura Nova, which has several roots and Japanese voice acting. And then there's also Sakura Dungeon, which is actually a dungeon crawler with VN elements. Their other VNs are basically more of the same. There's a couple of free ones too, so, if you like the art, then might as well give those a go as well, right? As a side note, Twitch, by the way, has a banned games list, and what I think is pretty funny is that it includes several specific Sakura titles that were popular early on. They updated the list last year to include Honey Pop 2, but they didn't add any Sakura games, so even Twitch couldn't be bothered to keep up with the releases. So the problem now was that other companies tried doing the same, like WinCloud, and that totally oversaturated the market with shovelware, basically. Kind of like how the Wii gained a reputation for lots of shovelware, the VN genre kinda had the same thing going on. On a related note, if you look at the first Honey Pop game, you can see the same thing happen there. The amount of copycat anime puzzle games that exist are almost endless. And what's really funny now is that in order to be original, they copy mobile puzzle games, so they're just being low effort in another way, which is pretty funny. Despite all of that happening, it did create a sustainable niche for the visual novel industry in the West. Remember how I said that fall was in quotations in the video title? Well, that's why. Visual novels got the big attention, it tapered off, but what we've got left is a new Western fan base that appreciates the genre and wants more. Over the years, we've seen the release of new VNs and releases of classics. This applies to consoles and PC. Unfortunately, there are times when Steam randomly doesn't allow certain ones on its platform, and then GOG doesn't allow 18 plus versions of VNs, so that's kind of a problem there. There's still instances where VNs don't have a proper platform, and certain sites have really awful DRM. Unfortunately, that's something plaguing the genre at the moment. But yeah, that's that regarding the rise and fall of visual novels and its overlapping neighbor genres. I hope that was helpful or interesting. If you've got anything to add, please comment below. There's multiple facets to this, and if you have specific games you want to talk about, that is very welcome. Like I said, I didn't really mention, I can't mention all the visual novels, but in the edit, hopefully I managed to show quite a few that were, popular at the time and things like that. Remember that there's a second channel you can subscribe to. I upload things there on occasion that doesn't really quite fit to the format of this channel. And finally, thank you to all the Patreon supporters, some of which you can see here on the end screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.